And here we are. And here you are, out of the pathways of life from Monday through Saturday, bringing with you all the things that have lightened or burdened you. Whether they be griefs or gladness, victories or defeats, we each walk into this room ready to be renewed. I cannot do it. We can only do it for each other as we lift our hearts, expand our minds, and make promises that tomorrow is a day to begin again. For was it not Emerson who said that the Holy One was so wise that rather than giving us eternity, he turned it into days so that we could handle it one day at a time. One day at a time. And so here we are, pausing in the week, in the month, that we might enter into tomorrow, renewed and ready for a day and a life waiting for our presence. And we gather and we also share words. The word invocation means to call forth. So we're calling forth a certain spirit with these words that are literally written on our walls, heard from this pulpit for decades. We have a newer member who said, I use this a lot. And I said, you're not alone. These are great words. They are our words. And so we share them responsively. This is indeed a day which the Lord has made. Let us be grateful for the capacity to see, feel, hear, and understand. And let us be especially grateful for the ties of love which bind us together, giving dignity, meaning, worth, and joy to all our days. I'm hoping by doing this over and over again, it will have a ritual quality for you. An invocation has a ritual quality, and maybe you will know it by heart, which is our hope this year, that you will learn to keep some things with you wherever you go. Someone who is not with you wherever you go, but should be with you at least today, is our welcomer today. Jim Taylor, why don't you come on up here? He's going to be doing a commercial for our annual campaign, but he's also going to be telling you a little bit about himself. Jim, it's your turn now, okay?
Thank you, Fred. Good morning, friends. As Fred said, good morning. As Fred said, my name is Jim Taylor, if you're friendly with me. I've been serving this year as a member of the Stewardship Committee, and I'm here today to speak about the theme of education here at Fountain Street Church. I've always had my feet in two different worlds. Currently, I work as an educator at Davenport University about half the week. And the other half of the week, I own a small company that does audiovisual stuff called Elephant AV. We plan and produce corporate nonprofit events all over town. I grew up Catholic. I actually attended high school a couple blocks south of here. Some of you know that place. Before considering attending services, Fountain Street provided me and my peers an education in music. I grew up thinking of this sacred place as the rock and roll church. So, either way you do that, you know. I've always loved seeing concerts here. I eventually got to help put on some concerts as a sound engineer in the 1990s as I kind of grew into that role. This room lends a certain magic to music, doesn't it? When I met my wife Amy, she was attending Fountain Street Church for a while, and I was running away from organized religion. She invited me to try this place. It took me a while to be comfortable, but they say your mind is the hardest muscle to stretch. As our relationship grew, so did our relationship with this church. Fountain Street blew me away over and over. The things that I heard on Sundays related to my life experience. I was proud to sign that book a few months before we got married in this sanctuary. 11 years ago yesterday, by the way. When I describe Fountain Street Church, I tell friends that we're all on a path towards enlightenment and that Fountain Street Church is a great place to consider your direction. No matter where you're going, all of us can come together and kind of consider that. Freedom to think, consider, disagree with the support of some pretty great people, I would say. This is the fifth Sunday of our fall drive, asking our membership to pledge for our shared house. This place has hosted more education in some years than many churches host in a decade. Almost daily, there are groups coming together to further their education in this place, people exploring their personal paths, from our friends with addictions who walk towards sobriety, to our fellow congregants who take one of our many classes just to continue their learning year after year. To our children, most of whom we don't see because they're walking their own journey in character school next door. A little later, you'll get to see them all dressed as they wish to be seen on this day, wearing the masks of firefighters and wizards, princesses, and sometimes ghastly ghouls. I think my daughter is in that category this year. We stand at the brink here in Fountain Street Church of 150 years together. We're still vigorously discussing our ideas of how this church should move forward into the future. We're a small congregation with very large voice in this community. We stand as a bulwark against oppression and against those who would make insulting and hurting others a part of some church's doctrine. We really do mean it when we say we're a house of all people.
Thank you, Jim, for that welcome. Good morning. I am Elizabeth Barnum. I'm one of the ministers here at Fountain Street Church, and I love this day in the church year. It is a day of tradition. Tradition that this year, in this time, in this place, takes shape in a particular way with a particular group of people. And as Jim shared, on most Sunday mornings, the children, the youngest among us, are over in the education wing doing those character building activities. But today is one of those days that for a brief window of time, we bridge worlds a bit in more ways than one. So with the youngest among us and the oldest among us, bringing the children into the sanctuary as goblins. This is a tradition that dates back like 70 years, and Oz dates back about 20 years. I'm going to say a little bit more about that when the children are down here. We go costume bowling this afternoon, all ages, intergenerational. It's a really festive day, and I think it also points to this wider opportunity to bridge sacred and secular, to bridge the holy and the ordinary. And so, without much further ado, I see some goblins that are ready to enter. So, here we go. Welcome, goblins. the reasons we wear masks on Halloween, again, is to bridge the ordinary and the divine, what we call the sacred and the profane, all together. And so welcome, welcome back, Oz. So I am going to send you on your way with a blessing. And to do that, I want us to remember something that we do in character school a lot is to find our quiet center, to find our heart center. And so I'm going to invite us, you can join with us. This is a practice we do often. It's to take a deep breath. Go on a little search inside where that quiet center might be. You can even put your hand on your heart. That helps me to steady my breath. This year at Fountain Street, we're talking about living by heart. Living by heart. And we have an affirmation we've been working with the last couple of weeks that I think applies for tomorrow, for Halloween, for every day, for this day. And I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to ask you to repeat it after me. And how about we do it at whisper volume today, okay? And the affirmation is, what I believe in my heart, I show in my actions. Okay, all together at whisper volume. What I believe in my heart, I show in my actions. Beautiful. And now a blessing for the goblins. On these hallowed days, may we too hallow the source of all that is, a source that is both life-giving and death-defying. The great teachings call on us to imagine ourselves in others' shoes, call us to try on the faces, the masks, the voices, and the characters of those who fascinate and captivate us, those whom we fear, those that we love, those that have gone before us, our ancestors. Guide young ones and older ones and everyone in between safely as they cross paths with strangers, knock on neighbors' doors, and open their own front doors. These days, as all days are a thin place, where darkness and light, heaven and earth, life and death, fear and awe dance so closely together. Saint us, trick us, treat us, beg us, betwixt us, and hallow us as we hallow the names of many and one. May it be so, blessed be, and amen. Go in peace.
Did you see the quote from a Washington Irving on the front? It's a little bit dark, isn't it? There's nothing like the silence and loneliness of night to bring dark shadows over the brightest mind. I chose that in part because whoever we are, even on our sunniest days, we know there's a compensating nighttime. That's the way the world is arranged, days and nights. I began a practice back in August. I don't know why, I just started doing it. And I do it every day, or at least try, to write a haiku or a senryu. It's the same poem, different meaning, every day. And then I post it on Twitter, which goes to Facebook. And I try to use it as a way to notice something I would not have noticed otherwise, because that's the nature of the haiku, is to notice. And I thought of one as I was listening to the Astral Dance and reading Washington Irving. I think I can remember it. So soon the sun sets. Will there be stars out tonight? A day is a life. We all bring the sun and the night with us. And we don't know whether when the dark comes, there will be stars to guide us. That's why we come to church, hoping for stars when the sun sets. Let us gather our souls in prayer. Is there some light beyond the light we know, some star that stands behind the sun? Our eyes say yes, for even in the brightest of days we know that they're out there. But is there something in life itself beyond the life we know? Or is there just some dark mystery that will swallow us up and render us gone? We stand ever with the unknowing and the hope that maybe something endures. Oh, there are those who are sure of it we are in fact, to be sure, they are quite sure. But no one knows for sure. In this moment, we dare to stand unsure, with hope, if not knowledge, with longing, if not clarity. As the great poet Jorge Andrade put it, mother naked. That is what our souls do in prayer, hoping to see stars at night. Upon these things, we give ourselves into that prayer, and we ask also that the names of those who have been dear to us are blessed in our silence. We lift up the names of Jack Rice, Dick Brooks, Audrey Walters, John Rossi, Ted McDonald, Joyce Teasdale, Gladys Ryan, Don Hanson, Marvin Stahl, Genevieve Buckingham, Mary Maguki, these whose lives came to their conclusion at this time in years past, stand as blessings to us today, and in their memory we rejoice and give praise. May the one who is filled with mercy, dwelling in the heavens' heights, bring proper rest beneath the wings of your presence to the souls of our beloved and those who have gone to their eternal place of rest. May the one who is the source of mercy shelter them beneath your wings eternally, and bind their souls to you and to us the living, that they may rest in peace, that we may be in peace. And let us say, Amen. ghoulishly glorious, sir. I'll be speaking about our nation in a few moments. And this passage from Isaiah that came out of the Jewish reading this week struck me as pertinent. Isaiah says, I, God, have summoned you, meaning Israel, and I have grasped you by the hand. I like that image, grasped you by the hand. Ever remember, you all remember when a father or a mother took you by the hand, and it was both comforting and enslaving at the same time, wasn't it? No resistance is futile. And God said, I created you and appointed you a covenant people, a light of nations. Opening eyes deprived of light, rescuing prisoners from confinement, from the dungeon, those who sit in darkness. You hear what Isaiah is saying? He is saying, I took you by the hand and forced a covenant upon you. You didn't have a choice. But the covenant is that you will be the light of nations. Opening eyes, rescuing prisoners from the dungeon of those who sit in darkness. When I contemplate our country, I cannot help but wonder if this is part of our story. On a more contemporary basis, Gore Vidal, that notable wit, observed once that half the American people have never read a newspaper. Half have never voted for president, and one hopes it is the same half. I have mentioned this quote from Charles Dickens before. They're so fond of liberty in this part of the globe that they buy her and sell her and carry her to market with them. They've such a passion for liberty, they can't help taking liberties with her. There's an old phrase we don't hear too much anymore. And Alistair Cook, that wonderful British-American journalist, commentator, America is a country in which I see the most persistent idealism and the blandest of cynicism, and the race is on between its vitality and its decadence. Let those with eyes see, let those with ears hear, as someone famously said. Okay, I have come to the end of a series that I started in September, and I'm actually ending with a sermon that I gave elsewhere, highly reworked for your blessing and benefit. I gave this sermon in its original form in Washington, D.C. on July 4th at a place called All Souls Church. And I told them then that in the warmth of that room, I intended to raise their temperature because my task was to remind them, if they did not remember, of the dream that is shared by liberal religion and America itself. For there is a common dream. Yes, there is a common dream between the faith we share and the country we are members of. That's been behind all my messages so far. And I've criticized our current political situation for 6 weeks for failing to see that dream. And it's time to put it in more positive terms, in part because the common dream that we do share as a nation and as a people of faith has been obscured and overwhelmed in our current situation, which is not very current at all, but has been growing for years. In the struggle to get and keep political power, political parties and others have bred cynicism and suspicion across this nation, something that infects the trust we absolutely need for democracy to live. Curing that infection is my desire. I do not know whether I will succeed, but I know that hope is the cure. So my desire this morning is to give you back your hope in this country, in yourself, the hope that we have as a people of faith and as citizens of America. I intend to raise your temperature this morning, to rouse your faith and hope so that you will leave here with a renewed vision of our task as a people of faith and as a nation. Wish me luck. I'm going to need it. Let me start on a personal note. I grew up in a Unitarian church back on the East Coast, in fact, in several. In fact, I describe myself as an accidental fourth-generation Unitarian. That's a fun phrase. It comes with the story, which I'm now going to tell you. My father grew up a nominal Methodist. His aunts were very devoted members of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, but his uncle was a sly dog who used to serve sherry when they had their meetings. Take a little work on that one there. At any rate, my father became indifferent to his religion as he grew older and met a young woman who was indifferent to her Catholicism, and so they got married. A natural fit, that was. And when they started having children, that would be me, they suddenly said, we really ought to think about church a little more. And so they started attending a Unitarian church in the greater Washington area where father was working for the government at the time. You might say I converted them, because if I were not there, they wouldn't have gone in the first place, right? At any rate, Dad was a numbers guy, worked in offices. He could add and do all those wonderful things that elude me. And so when we moved back to their hometown of Baltimore, we joined the downtown Baltimore church, very old Unitarian church, and Dad lived nearby, worked nearby, and therefore he would volunteer to fix the books, to go and do the numbers after work. And he would go up to the office and he would sit there with the ledgers and work on it. And he would get tired from time to time and would leaf through the scrapbooks of the church. You know, churches used to keep scrapbooks, so they would trim out things in the newspaper to help remember what happened in the past. And there, he's found something that disturbed him completely. Now, I have to back up for a second. My father, I should say my grandmother, died in childbirth. That is to say, my father never knew his mother. Knew of her, never knew her. Didn't know much about her story. Now you know what's going to disturb him, because there he was in the church office looking through the scrapbook, and what should he find pasted into that church's scrapbook but his birth mother's obituary and death notice and the story of her funeral in that church, which he did not know until he saw it that day. I tell this story because that means my father, who thought he found Unitarianism on its own, was probably congenitally made that way. And I tell this story because I believe the American dream, the deep dream, the lasting one that's larger than party, that's larger than our moment, that's larger than this election, is in every American heart, whether they know it or not. And I intend to open that book and point to that spot where all of us are Americans. Now that's important because one could get the impression over the last, 2 or 3 decades that America was a wholly owned subsidiary of the conservative Christian movement in America. They have owned the slogans and all the symbolism. And we could get a little bit frosted at that, at least I am. We've heard the voice all the time that worries about abortion and homosexuality and the loss of God everywhere. It's worried about Muslims and Latinos and outsiders running about, and it's partnered up with a kind of rugged individualism that thinks the best government is no government and the best taxes are no taxes, and that the only thing that we exist for as a nation is for each other to get a chance to get rich. Now, there was another idea of America when I was growing up. It was almost exactly the opposite, of an active government that was out there trying to fix all the problems at once and seemed to find a day to come, never seemed to pass a day without finding a program that could fix something. And here's the problem. Each one thinks the other one is un-American. You're wrong. Tax and spend liberals, we hear on one side. We hear fusillades on the left talking about hard-hearted conservatives. We hear the duel all the time in our elections. Advertising, TV news, op-eds, and beyond. We are awash in an ocean of slogans and words, innuendos and accusations, rantings from the right, fusillades from the left, think tanks to the left of me, pundits to the right of me. I think people want, I know I want, something that everyone can say yes to. And that's what I've been hinting at all these last 6 weeks as I've taken the preamble of the Constitution apart. That's something we all believe in. It is a great vision, but it's not a vision for the nation. It's a vision for our government. It's important. As I said at the outset, it's a kind of a mission statement for what the federal government is for. And I've examined each clause and have contrasted it with where we really are, and I found the wanting and all that good stuff. But today, I speak not to our government, but to our people, to the nation as a whole, the vision, the hope that is larger. What are we about? At the end of my last message last week, and if you weren't here, shame on you, I found a statement from that great conservative, George F. Will, who said that America, the business of America, is not business, nor is it war, but justice and securing the blessings of liberty. That comes very close. But actually, it can be better and shorter. And that leads me to my next story, not a personal one. It's hard to believe, but we were not the only liberal Baptist church. There were many of them a century ago. People like Harry Emerson Fosdick over in New York, and his successor William Sloane Coffin in the 60s. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Baptist of the very liberal persuasion. But the one I want to talk to you about is not those, nor George Herman Randall, who was here, or Alfred Wesley Wishart, but a fellow you may not know of named Francis Bellamy. Francis Bellamy was a Christian socialist. Yes, and he affirmed both of those words. And he was working in Boston, and his church got tired of being told that the poor needed help. So they gave him leave to leave, and he left and went and joined a magazine called Youth's Companion. And he was given a task around 1891 or 92 to bolster patriotism among young people. And he came up with something. The Pledge of Allegiance. That's right. A Christian socialist is the author of the Pledge of Allegiance that's said every day in American classrooms and on the floor of the Congress. He wrote it, by the way, without the words "under God." He is a minister, remember. But it was fine for him that we didn't mention God then. And the 5 words that I want to bring up today are at the very end of that. I maintain that they are what we as a nation are about and what we share as a liberal faith. 5 words you can take home. You already know them. You've said them 1,000 times. Liberty and justice for all. Is that not the whole truth of our nation? When we ask what America is about, is this not the whole shooting match, the whole ball of wax, the big kahuna, the big picture, the big Lebowski? This is the dream of America, liberty and justice for all. When we hear words like, we hold these truths to be self-evident, when we hear words like, we the people of the United States, or government of the people, by the people, for the people, give me your tired, your poor, I have a dream. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The stirring feelings we have inside us come from that hope for liberty and justice for all. The American dream is not owning one's home, notwithstanding the real estate industry. It's not getting rich. It's not becoming famous. It's not being a basketball player or a rock and roll artist or a tycoon or a tech baron. The American dream is liberty and justice for all. In this most tempestuous season, I remember that it was Barbara Jordan back in 1976 at the Democratic National Convention in our bicentennial year who said, what the people want is very simple. They want an America as good as its promise, and that promise is liberty and justice for all. Tell me I am wrong. Now, a second personal note. Back in high school, I was among those who were critical of the Vietnam War, and one way I showed that was by refusing to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Colin Kaepernick got it from me. No, he did not. And I remember that one of those days we had a substitute teacher. She was actually the mother of a classmate. We'd known each other over the years. And she was also a refugee from Lithuania. And when she saw that I didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, she called me over. She was disappointed in me. Of course, I didn't intend to hurt her, but I did, and I felt bad. My solemn protest had not landed as a righteous statement, but as an insult to someone who had fled the danger and tyranny in her homeland and found safety and freedom in the United States of America. That's the beginning of when I began to realize that symbols are complicated. Flags and words and songs hold more than they seem. In 1988, the presidential election was partly decided when one candidate insinuated that the other was less patriotic because he didn't make all the students in his state say the Pledge of Allegiance. Some of you remember that. Congress started wearing all those flag pins then, you know. And that's when they started saying the Pledge of Allegiance, just like kids in school. I wonder how many of them realize that they're reciting socialist words every day. But that does not matter, because I think that those 5 little words contain so much more than liberty and justice for all. Because they're not Baptist words. They're not socialist words. They are words that liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans, Christians, Muslims, atheists, rich, poor, black, white, male, female, gay, straight, poor, immigrant, they all believe in that. I think this is the hope we all have as a nation. And I think it's what we claim as the basis of our liberal religion, that there can be a country and a faith where we ensure individuals can think for themselves and live by their convictions, but also a place where community is prized and protected, where we can be one as well as many, out of many, one. That is the motto, isn't it? Liberty and justice for all, out of many, one. How hard is this, really, people? It is hard. It is. If it weren't, we wouldn't have to work on it after 200 years. For example, we've had liberty and justice for some. For a long time, if you were a white Protestant male, life was pretty good. If you weren't one of those 3, not so good. We've had liberty without justice in the worst sense of the word. Wild West shenanigans, Wall Street shenanigans. We've had justice, in a sense, without liberty. If you were a woman in Salem in 1692, chances are you didn't have much liberty at all. And if you happened to work for the government and were a little bit liberal, the Army McCarthy hearings were pretty scary in 1954. We've had some for some and not some for others, too much of one, too little of the other. We need absolutely both. Every one of those words is equal in weight. Liberty and justice for all. This sounds like a superhuman task, doesn't it? How can we possibly accomplish it? The great French philosopher Albert Camus observed that superhuman only means something that cannot be done in one lifetime. We must have a really superhuman task on our plate. But I think the founders knew that. They wrote that long sentence about equality, and they didn't mean it as well as they thought. The framers, they knew it was going to take a while. That's why they let us amend the Constitution. People who we call pioneers, who put everything up for the chance to have a life. The women of the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848, who demanded the right for vote and wouldn't get it for another 82 years. The freed slaves of the Reconstruction, who rather than destroying their masters, former masters, created states and governments and schools. How about all those immigrants who saw that statue as they came in the harbor on all those ships? And how about today the people over at Standing Rock who are asking that their land, promised them generations ago, be their land today? And what about black Americans who marched on Washington? Not just in 1963, I looked it up. They marched in 1957, 1963, 1969, 1983, 1995. They keep coming back because they still believe that it's possible to get liberty and justice for all. And what about us? Right here. Did we not take in Corpus Christi when no one would take it? A play that was too controversial for everyone else. We gave them a home. When someone asked if Louis Farrakhan could speak here, I said yes. And I got plenty of colleagues telling me I was wrong to do it. But I believe in liberty and justice for all. When some of us went down to start demonstrating for marital equality, we got plenty of people giving us, I'll always say, less than pleasant looks and less than pleasant words, but we did it because we believe in liberty and justice for all. And this week, some of us will be back there holding up signs saying Black Lives Matter, even though we have plenty of people showing us 1 out of 5 digits and going with words to match, because we have yet to mean in this country that liberty and justice for all includes all the black people in this country. We have to say these words. And I will pledge allegiance any day someone stands up, because I honestly believe in it as much as my substitute teacher. I really do. I really do believe we are a nation that wants to do that. Even as I know we won't get there in my life. But I can get us a little bit closer, can't I? We have to say these words to remind ourselves when the going gets tough and we wonder why we should keep trying, because the forces pushing back are so fierce. When it seems that hope is far away, perhaps as far away as it ever was. We say these words the way soldiers chant as they march, for the reason protesters sing as they march. We say liberty and justice for all when someone sees our signs, sees our diversity stake, steals them, defaces them. We say the words liberty and justice for all when it gets hard to be fair and just. We say it when someone asks why we are a church or that we aren't even a church. We say it when people wonder why we let gay and lesbian teens dance here and have fun. We say it when we put money in the plate for others and not ourselves, because that means everyone, everyone. 5 little words. That's all we need as a people, as a nation. But it's one giant idea. It's small enough to carry in your heart, to say to a friend, to explain why you're being outrageous, why you go to Fountain Street Church. It's large enough to carry you through the day. It's large enough to hold your hope if you dare. This is the pearl of great price, liberty and justice for all. And this morning, as we prepare for the election, that's what I want you to take into the voting booth. Write it down if you have to. Write it on your palm like people do these days. Liberty and justice. And then before you throw any mark, look at it. Look at it. You do write it on your hand, because guess what? It's in your hands. And then look at the ballot and hold your hand next to the names. Which ones does it fit? You're smart. I'm not here to tell you about who to vote for. I'm here to tell you about what to vote for. Vote for liberty and justice for all. To claim it on your hands, in your heart, to proclaim it with your voice and your deeds, to take it with you everywhere you go. Stand there in that booth. Stand up in your life and say, liberty and justice for all. That's my America. That's my faith. Just 5 little words with the biggest idea of all. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. Amen.